of clickers in the classroom, we're going to talk about a participant list and using that within PowerPoint itself. So I have PowerPoint open. You see the turning point slide, which means that I opened PowerPoint through the turning point dashboard, and now I want to open another presentation. So all I have to do is go over here to my recently used files. And here I have a presentation that I use, as part of my lectures. So we'll open that up. And in this presentation, you see that I have 103 slides. So this is a really big one. And what I did is I took the publisher's slides that they provided, and I went through and I inserted various, polling questions into this already made presentation. So here's my turning point tab up here as I have this. Now, a couple tips just in terms of some best practice ideas. One is to put a slide in here that actually tells the students, this is what we're doing today with clickers, and your ID is going to be recorded automatically, and you have to respond within the time frame. Let them know if they can change their answer, or if once they click the button, if that's going to be permanent, and let them know that they're going to get to practice at least one time. Now, once they do this, they will be leading the effort because this just takes no time to learn. As I go through, and you can see these dark green slides in my presentation, I like to have a slide that very quickly says, get your clickers ready. It's a call back to participation because as part of any classroom discussion, there is going to be discussion. So whether it's you talking, whether it's a classmate talking, and some of the other students may zone out for just a moment. I mean, you hope not, but it happens to the best of us even when we're engaged. We get distracted. So this is just one of those ways of summoning everybody back into the collective and saying, okay, we're getting ready to do a clicker question. Of course, then you're going to have the clicker question. I like to include a slide that is something about the chapter that gives them an opportunity to use their clicker device, make sure it's working, that the battery is, charged, that it's tuned to the right channel, and that everything is working correctly. Now, some things that I do, and everybody has their techniques, is I always ask my students about at the start of the chapter, the people who are profiled. I've noticed and had some students tell me, well, if the text is in a blue box or a yellow box, that's optional. I don't have to read that. So I like to say, well, I'm going to ask about that. That's specifically the stuff that I'm going to ask you about because it lays the groundwork or the foundation for what we're going to talk about. Now, something I do a little further on this, you'll notice that I have a box. There's nothing special about this box. I just in PowerPoint, inserted a box, put some text in it that said, here comes a clicker question. But what I might do is say to a particular student, do you know who these guys are? Okay, and that one student that I'm calling on, even though this is going to be a clicker question, maybe they say, yes, I know absolutely that, who these guys are. And I say, okay, well, students, do you think he's right or she's right? Class, do you think that person's right? And they get to all weigh in on it, okay? Now, the other thing is the student may say, I have no idea who these people are. And, of course, you can see the big hint back here, and I try to help them succeed. But if they say, well, I don't know, then I say, you know what? Let's ask the audience. Let's ask the class, and let's see what everybody else, and then you can decide whether you're going to go with them or if you're going to go on your own. So if they said correctly and the class agrees with them, I say, you were right and everybody was right, and that's great. If they didn't know, then they get to choose, is the class correct? Sometimes the class knows, sometimes they don't. So anyway, again, you see the slide. Here comes the clicker question. Then, of course, I'm going to present my slide, and then, of course, I'm going to go over the answer with them. So anyway, this just kind of brings it all together. So speaking of bringing it all together, we are going to talk about the participant list, but just to recap all the things that we've talked about in the videos prior to this one that are part of the playlist. First of all, when you're in PowerPoint, you can set preferences that you can apply to all the slides. This is a great convenience. Now, you'll notice when I opened that, it understands that I'm talking specifically about PowerPoint polling, you have all these apply all buttons, so you can go through and say, you know, what format do I want, accept only the first response, what should the countdown timer automatically default to if I place one on my slides, you know, just all those things that we've kind of talked about. One thing I wanted to specifically mention is under connections, and you're going to see some more options load here, and that is this enforce participant list. So I'm going to do that because, I don't know, maybe there is another class right next to mine where they're also using clickers, and maybe some of those clickers are, you know, accidentally trying to participate in my class, and I don't want that to happen. So I can enforce the participant list. Another thing is, depending on the policies at your academic institution, students may have withdrawn from a class, they may have been dropped from a class, and especially if they have bought their clicker, they may be showing up and fully participating thinking they're still on the roster. So if you keep your participant list up to date, they would see on their response pad, hey, nothing is, you know, going in here. I'm not accepting that response. But this is not checked by default. This is left open, so you may want to come in and check that or not. This is something for you to consider. And then, of course, all the different options under the session, you know, anyway, so you can see all these things. There's so many neat things. Again, just a brief review. Uh-oh, having some trouble with that. Okay, so in the sessions area, we've talked about the fact that you may want to save the session, especially, you know, I've got 103 slides. I'm not going to get through all of these slides. It's amazing how many slides you can incorporate into a PowerPoint when you are following a format of saying a clicker question is coming, then asking a question, then presenting results, and that type of thing. Okay, so maybe or maybe not I'll get through this 103 questions, so I may want to save this, save it as a new session, or save it a continuing part of that session. Definitely before I start this lecture with the class, I would reset probably the entire session. Now you see this has already been reset. My graph values are all set to 0. So this has already been reset. Once you have collected data, neat little thing to observe under here is that you can look at the session reports. We looked at reports briefly within the Turning Point software itself, but this is just, again, another way to go into this, and you see it says no session data, and you have some additional options here to look at session statistics and that type of thing. But again, you can view by question or view by participant, which are some of the really interesting ones. Look at the details. We'll go into this maybe after we collect some data. You're going to do live polling. And as we continue over here, this is the part that we're going to get into. You may want to create your list from within PowerPoint, just like you could create the list within the Turning Point software. Now, a couple ways to do this. One is you create it manually, but notice underneath this it says that you can import this from a CSV file or a text file or some other kind of, I will talk more about this in a minute. So maybe you have an Excel file that you keep of all your students' names, you exported that as a CSV. Well, at this point you can just import that, and that would be really great. Or you can, if you have the permissions with your learning management system, such as Blackboard, Moodle, and even Desire to Learn and all those, Canvas is in here, then you can import the names directly from there, and that would be kind of cool. In my college, I don't have that access, but that's under or Manage, where you can create a new list. So you could do that. Now, Load List may be a little bit different than what you're thinking of, because truthfully, under Manage, even though it says Create New, you could load your Excel file, right? But Load List is talking about very specifically a Turning Point participant list. So down here, it's looking for a TPLX file. Those files are created when you are in the Turning Point software and you have created, through whatever method, your participant list, and then from the Turning Point software, you export that list. That's a real handy thing to have because, again, as an instructor, you're maybe moving from classroom to classroom like I am. Keep that on a flash drive, keep it in the cloud, wherever you want to put it, and pull that right in before you start your session today. And you would know that it's in the Turning Point format because it's a Turning Point file, and it would import very easily. Now, speaking of imports, in an earlier video of this series, I did import, using the Turning Point software, an Excel spreadsheet into the Turning Point software. And it prompted me and said, do you want to leave the file where it's at, the imported file, or do you want to move it to the Turning Point designated folder? And I said move it to the Turning Point designated folder, because what that does, and that folder, by the way, is wherever you're running the software, which is why it's a great idea to have that software installed on your computer. So what you can do is, it's auto here. Now this is the setting that I use when I have a sign-in sheet and the students' clickers, and I ask them to write down their clicker ID next to their name, okay? Because that just means anybody with a clicker can respond. I'm not trying to track the names. I'm going to do that on a piece of paper. But if I'm going to use a participant list, I just click this drop-down box, and any participant list I have, and you may recall that this is participant list 1, voila! It is loaded, okay? Now, there are some cool things that we can do at this particular point. We could go back and start to try to look at reports and that type of thing, but under Participant Monitor, you see that I can go in at any time and see how people are doing. Now, obviously, we haven't done anything, so there's not much to look at there, but question information, participant question details. I'm going to close that, so you see the list is loaded. Another thing I can do, let me pause here to say this. Remember the somewhat downfall of the participant list when you are providing students with the clickers is that you have to make sure that you give the student the clicker. In fact, let me go back in here. I've got to make sure that Mickey Mouse has this particular clicker. So I'm going to have to search through all my clickers and look at all the device IDs and make sure that I give that person that one. Unless you have, an easy system for passing these out, like again I mentioned the shoe holders are a great way, or some kind of even file folders that you drop those in. Maybe you tape a post-it note onto the handheld clicker with the student's name on it. Whatever system you use, just make sure you give them back the correct clicker. Or, now that I've loaded the participation list, one of my options is available that was not available before, and it says real-time registration. Select a participant list and allow the participant to assign their device to their name at the press of a button. Now, this works in kind of an interesting way. You might have to experiment with this. They're listed by name, and when I click the play button, it's ready. You notice it says registration is open. So I'm taking any old clicker, and when I push the number 1, it says, okay, I'm going to assign my clicker to Mickey Mouse. So I might look at Mickey Mouse and say, go ahead and click the number 1 button on your clicker. He pushes it, and it shows up there as the device ID. Now, if instead I had said to Mickey, click the number 2 button, it would have assigned it to Minnie. And my clicker pad has all the numbers through 0, and you can see 0 down there. Now you'll see that this is grouped in sections of 10 because I only have that many numbers, so I'm going to have to get all of these folks assigned, okay, and then what I would do is I would move to the next set of participants and I would do that again. The one nice thing about this real-time registration is that it's going to be accurate. Nobody is going to have to type in, maybe they transpose some letters or numbers or something like that, and so you're not going to have to worry about that. So that is a cool feature, something for you to look at. You also, by doing that, I might add, you also make sure that their clicker is responding. They get to see with their own 2 eyes, okay, mine is registering. You can even tell them, because you may allow them to show their responses later on, you know, you may say to Pepe Le Pew, hey, write that down because that's your clicker number, or kind of remember 88E9 so you'll know whether your vote has actually been recorded or not. Okay, so I've reset my slides. I'm ready to run this. You see I've got my Answer Now button. I've also got my 15-second countdown clock. And so I would go into my presentation, and maybe I'm already at this question. And I say, okay. And you see the poll is closed. And I'm going to click Answer Now. Okay, my poll opened, and so I'm going to go ahead and do some. There's one person has responded, 2 people. Let me get a bunch of responses in here. And you see the question that I have there, which is I'm really just trying to kind of start a conversation with the students. This particular chapter is a great one to use clickers on because it's on motivation. It's one of the fun chapters. You know, this way you can if you and notice it's building that response in real time. And I'll say, what? Some of you are not motivated. What are you talking about? And you can see how this is blocking the question. Real handy to be able to grab it by this little dotted line. And when your mouse gets that symbol, you can move it so it stays out of the way. But I'll say, what do you mean that some of you are not ready to respond, you know, to be motivated? What is this? And that normally you'll get a little bit of a laugh out of them. And so again, it's just a fun way to start the conversation, to get them connected into the class and into the conversation. Now, at this point, I'll say, okay, now listen, some of you are starting to dawdle. So, I'm so excited. The music is actually playing. On some of the computers, it will play, and on some of them, it won't. I'm not really sure why, but the students love it. Okay, so you can see my computer's old, so the music didn't stop. It will in your classroom stop and start at the correct time, okay? But 9 people responded. Hopefully that was all my students. The poll is closed. I can see it was fairly evenly distributed. I might have to say to the class, I've got my work cut out for me today trying to get the class motivated, okay? And then you would just continue on. Again, here comes a clicker question. Get your clickers ready. Okay, and here it is. And I got my Answer Now button. I didn't move it where you can see it. I apologize here. So I'm going to open the poll, and I'm going to say, okay, folks, let's get in here. This time they have 4 choices. If they dawdle, you can't see it. I apologize. There comes the music, and the students respond to that. There are options to turn all this stuff on and off. About the 4th class, 3rd class, they will get tired of that kind of stuff, so I didn't click enough buttons. But okay, so now my poll is closed, and so you kind of see how and there's my results, and you see how this works. Okay, so I'm going to exit out of the slide. Now what I may want to do at this particular point is save the session, save it as a new session. Maybe I want to go ahead and look at some of the reports, and that's great. And if I do, okay, now this is by question, and again, remember we just saw this, that it was evenly distributed. And I'm gonna maybe I'm gonna look at this by participant. And so, there's now, you see the difference here, because here's Daisy Duck, and I also have the device ID. So either way I go, I kind of have access to this, so I'm doing okay there. There's Pepe Le Pew. So I've got all my devices set up, and I can see who got things right and who got, this was, are you ready to be motivated? Yes was the correct answer. Okay. Here, no, are you ready to get motivated? This person said no, and that was Bugs Bunny. He's not motivated. Roger Rabbit said no also. So anyway, you kind of see the how that works there. So okay, and C for correct, and I for incorrect, obviously, right? So, and this was their answer, B and C. So really cool thing. I can add some of my other options in here. What was the correct answer? Well, for question number 2 is Google Founders. This person didn't vote at all, and so I'm seeing no participation, right? This person got it right. Okay. answer choices. What were the answer choices? Well, now I can see them all. So not only can I see what they responded, but I can see what their choices were. And again, you see how you can turn this stuff on and off if it's starting to get too cluttered for you. Response history, if they changed, I only voted one time, but if they changed their response. Response times, now that's kind of neat. I tell you why, because some people you will see have thoughtful input. Other people you will find click as soon as the question is, and that may be their way of faking that they're participating. So you might want to say to that person, slow down, read the question, and get in there. Now, I don't have any standards defined. That's for another day, but session does not have standards. You can see that. And active participants only? Well, no, maybe I want to see all these devices, because if they're not participating, I want to know about it. I'm sorry, let me get down here to somebody who's not participating. Well, Princess Bella, Prince Charming, not participating. What's going on there? So I have to talk to them. We're going to have a conference after class one day, I guess. Okay, so you can see how all that stuff works. I'm going to close the reports. Very cool. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I do, again, you can export these reports. You can print them, keep them for your records. I'm a digital person. I love to keep it this way. File it by the class section, the date, whatever works for you. I'm going to close that now. And if I forget to save the session, it will prompt me to do that, so that's kind of a nice thing to remember. But I think I'm just going to go ahead and say, let me save this session. And again, it automatically says that this is today's date. It puts that information in here. It's actually 12:57 p.m., so I've even got that, so I kind of know what section it is. But I'm going to say that this is some practice data with participant list. Oops, let me spell correctly. With participant list. So that's kind of cool. I'm going to save that. Now I know I've got my session and I'm done. Maybe I have another class, so I'll go ahead and get out of that. I just closed that up and I'm good to go. So I hope that was helpful for you. And there's so many more much more that you can do with this, and I encourage you, read the help documents. It's just such a great way to engage the students, and it does take just a little bit of time to set up, to put the slides in there, but once you have it set up, then you're good to go, for the remainder of the time. So it works out really great. So enjoy. Thanks for your time.